picked up this welding helmet, auto darkening, from Harbor Freight for I think it's like 90 bucks or so. And auto darkening makes welding a lot easier because it has this little LCD that will turn dark automatically once it sees the bright lights from welding. They do take power, so make sure that you put in the batteries before you use it, or else you'll be seeing spots for a while. All right, now we can see the displays on, so you can switch between grinding and welding. You can change the sensitivity and shade. You can change how dark it gets too. Between 9 and 13, a logical scale. So here's a welder, it's a stick welder, and what's nice about it is that you can switch between 120 volts and 240 volts. So right now, I'm plugged into 120 volts, which means you need to look at the inner dial for amperage, so you can't go as high. So obviously if I had a 240 volt supply, it looks like I could go up to 225 amps, which is a lot. Typically when I've welded in the past, I've been between 70 and 90, and that's with some bigger welding rods and thicker metal. So yeah, here you have the electrode holder, the ground, and then of course we have some welding rods. I got some pretty thin ones with a kind of a low current range, again because that is kind of limited on the 120 volts, and also because this metal is actually quite thin. Some vegan heat resistant welding gloves. So HeatWorks reinforced by ironclad. Before we actually weld onto the chassis, I'm going to try some welds to see how it goes, because it's been a while. Just attach the ground, electrode holder, electrode. So let's give it a few little sparks. See if the mask works and this works. So the amps normally set at 15 there. Got to look at that. And now I've put it up to about 45. When you do stick welding, the weld will be covered with slag. Wire brush. So there's my little test weld. You see it's not too bad. It's raised up pretty high though, which means it's not going very deep in the metal. So I think I'd want to turn up the amperage here. And I'm a little bit worried about going into metal this thick. So I think I'll test it on a piece of the old framing or the old chassis pieces that I cut out. So yeah, you can see I burned a hole already because it's so thin. Let's take a closer look. This metal is so thin that even at 45 amps, just burned right through. Of course, I'm worried about that happening here as well. So I think there's not much for it, but just to give it a try. So I got some of this new steel here to replace these bits.
Grinding down to clean metal for the upcoming welds.
So you can see this is a metal grinding disc. You see it's quite thick, especially compared to this, which is a cutoff wheel. So you don't want to do that kind of grinding I just did with this one, because you're only supposed to cut on the edge with this. And this one, the grinding disc, you can actually hit the side of it to make smooth surfaces.
Oh, nice.
See, I've just added a bit of a bevel on there to give more room to weld. And it's a little bit funny because the metals are of different thicknesses, so it's not going to clamp it perfectly. So I'll have to just be aware of that. So you can see it's holding it up, but it's not super tight. We got some of these little welding squares. So make sure things are even. See if I'm going straight. Yeah, one thing is really important to know when welding, you don't want to just weld the whole thing all at once. You want to really tack all your material into place in a couple corners, because otherwise putting a weld, it can really distort the metal and the other side might move quite a bit. And because this material is thicker, I'll spend more time with the electrode on here, and I'll just kind of trying to hop over to the thinner metal quickly, lest I burn through it. Okay, now we're going to put some tacking. To me it feels like maybe it's a little low on current. Okay, that was a bit better. Alright, so there's a bit of gap between here just because I cut it a little bit short. It's not too bad to have a bit of a gap. So I'm going to have to do a couple passes to boost it. And you always want to clean this up anytime before you weld, because you don't want to have slag inclusions in there. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty satisfying. Just a couple tacks, then that's already in there. Pretty flat. What I'm going to do is just do another pass welding, try and fill in those holes. I didn't have an easy way to clamp that to that, so I just put a piece of wood with this clamp here to get it so that it's flush. Same thing over here, just use those to make sure they're square. But really, I just want to make sure it's a continuous line between all of these. Alright, so now to tack it. So there's my second set of tacks, well, on the second bar here. And those are just looking a lot better than the first pass, so pretty happy with that. Okay, that was a nice, just kind of dirty pass to get it going. Because sometimes with this rusty metal, it helps do a pass. I was originally going to leave this piece of angle iron. I'm thinking it's not that expensive to replace, and compared to the other side, you can see how much less eaten away by rust that is. So I figure while I'm here, I'm just going to chop this out. Same with that one too. Here on the left side of the trailer, that's where the bathroom and the shower was. That's why it's more water damaged. Okay, still not broken. Good. Got that out. Now I just need to grind those little bits back.
Here, I just really want to emphasize the importance of setting up your metal pieces well before you start welding. Make sure everything's straight, make sure everything's level, make sure it's all clamped before you start, because you don't want to weld something in and then have to cut it out again.
So the idea here, I tacked it up on top, and then I also tacked it down there so that this whole beam doesn't move up or down while I'm welding it. I've managed to replace that one, that one, that one, and that one, as well as that one there.
Make sure you clean up the surfaces on the old metal really well before you weld to it. I'm grinding down my tacks so that when I do the full weld, it'll be a lot smoother.
This is what I love about welding.
Now onto the vertical welds on each side of this beam.
I'm pretty happy with that one. Not the prettiest there either. So here, I've just clamped a piece of angle iron to the top of this one that I'm welding in, and that makes it nice and flush. And then I can use this to make sure it's square. And I've also used this piece of flat bar, to line it up along there and see that it's all going pretty straight. So, time to weld that in. Again, it's just really important to tack everything, just kind of get it in position before you just do the full weld, or else things might move around a lot. Alright, my welds are getting a bit more consistent. Still not the most beautiful in the world. And anyway, I'm going to grind them back so it's all flush so that when the plywood's on top of this, it can sit nice and flat. That one didn't come out as bad as I thought. There's a little hole that's starting to burn through the thinner metal there. So here you can see the new material on the outside compared to the old material. Put a piece of flat bar across there, just so that when I put this there, it should rest pretty close to where it should go. You can see it's pretty flat, which means it really penetrated into both metals there, which I'm happy about. And then I think that's the neatest little vertical weld I've gotten. Look at that little dog brake. Huh? Got this nice replacement piece to go right here. So I'm gonna have to grind that away first. It might be really hard to see, but there's actually a little bit of a lip here from when they cut it. So I'm just gonna take the grinder and zip it along there to get rid of that little lip. Alright, got that one welded in. Kinda looks okay up there. I'm gonna grind that off so it's all flat anyway. A couple gaps there, but that's gonna hold, that's not going anywhere. Alright, I've got this all clamped in, square. I've measured between here and here, and here to make sure that's even. And we're good to tack it in. Oh, here's a good dog. So I've got the new 4-inch angle iron just clamped up there from both sides to see how far it sticks out in the back. What I'm thinking now actually is that there's supposed to be a piece of angle iron going from this one to this one all along under here. And so I think I can weld that or tack that into place, and that'll help hold those at the right distance there. And then I can do another one temporary kind of across the back here to keep it all square. And then I think I would take it down and then weld it to the bumper in a more convenient location. I think first things first, I'm gonna cut 2 inches off of this and that side. Just get it down to the right dimensions and it'll be lighter. All right, to cut this, you can see I've marked off 2 inches and I've just clamped it to the chassis so I can cut it without hitting anything else. One down. So I wanted to round off the edge a bit so that it's not so sharp, and that way paint can stick to it better as well. Now I'm going to see how it lines up, like kind of the distance out that it will hold the bumper if I line it up with that gusset or whatever that's called, that support. Holding this here, it looks like a pretty consistent reveal. I've also been putting this, flat against there, and then measuring the distance here where my finger's wiggling. I've got that's about 5/8 of an inch there, and same on the other side. So I cut this 1-inch piece of angle iron there to go between these bumper bars, I'll call them. I have it clamped in place, and I'm gonna go outside and check once again the alignment before I weld this onto there.
I forgot to record it, but I did weld a piece of flat bar across the back part of the bumper bars to help keep it all square.
So we have this structure here that needs to be welded to the bumper, and of course we want it centered in the bumper. We have 12 1/8 on each side, and just scribe along here so I know where it goes. Do the same thing over here. Alright, I've clamped a little piece of angle iron here just to keep this flush with the bottom of the bumper. I did the same on the other side, just with a piece of scrap channel. And the welding adds just a bit of haze. Alright, so I've got it tacked. I'll clean this up and then start going for a full weld. Alright, I'm using some 1/8 inch rods, and I have the welder turned up to 70 amps to get it to melt in there well. Alright, so that's as far as I can get with a 1/8 inch rod until it got a little too short for me to reach, and I felt like I was going to start burning my gloves. That's looking good, and this is why I wanted to weld it in this position rather than vertically. Alright, I'm pretty happy with that.
As you can imagine, I keep rotating this so that I can do horizontal welds.
I have the bumper assembly all fabricated. I need to maneuver it into there and clamp it up. Not in the right position yet. That's looking really good. This is with that just clamped in. Just coming out here to see if it looks okay. I've got the bumper tacked up. Now I'm just gonna go through and weld it nice and solid. This one's a little bit bent. I was gonna see if I could fix this bend here a little bit with this nice big spanner.
I'm unbending it gradually just so that I don't create any other kinks in the metal.
I mean, it looks a lot better, but yeah, it's bent pretty well. I thought about cropping out this whole big piece, but I don't think it's lost too much of its strength. And again, this trailer is not going to be going anywhere. I'm just going to park it on the land. I think it's looking better. You can see that slight bow right there. I think that's going to be hard to get out completely unless I had a lot more skills and maybe some heat. And that part over there, this was also bent in a bit. That's why I was hitting it back towards the rear. And then this part here, it does bow in a little bit. There you can kind of see that bow. See over here. See, that looks a lot better after some of that hammering. I replaced that part there, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one there, that one there, and the bumper. And I think we're in pretty good shape. And I've done those right there, those two pieces of angle iron.
Overall, it costs about $900 for the tools and materials to repair the chassis, and took about 15 hours.
In the next video, we'll be priming and painting the chassis, and I hope you'll join us for that. Thanks!